Director of MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific. This is our information session for potential applicants to our 2025 MedTech Innovator APAC program. Joining me are my colleagues based out of our Singapore office. We have Glenn, Narissa, Jermaine, and Alvin here. I wanted to extend, first of all, a big thank you to BioMelbourne Network, with whom we are co-hosting this event, and their CEO, Karen Parr, who you'll hear more from in just a moment. So as I said, this info session is for any startup that is considering applying to the MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific program for 2025, with a particular focus on applicants that are based in Australia and New Zealand. So in terms of today's agenda, I will ask Karen to briefly introduce BioMelbourne Network to begin with. I will then speak briefly about the MedTech Innovator program and what to expect as an applicant, a participant, and ultimately as a cohort company. And then we are delighted to have Dr. Hugh Paterson here, co-founder of Sydney Heart Valve, one of our alumni companies from our 2024 cohort, dialing in from Sydney. So we'll go into a short fireside chat that will be followed by question and answer. So for those of you who are joining as webinar attendees, we will be taking your questions. You can queue those up at any time using the Q&A function or the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end of our session. So as I said, delighted to have both Karen and Hugh with us this morning or this afternoon. And with that, I'll stop my screen sharing and I'll invite Karen to introduce herself and the BioMelbourne Network.
Thank you so much, Frederick, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I think these opportunities to connect and to have these global conversations and support is what underlies our sector. But let me just quickly share my screen, and hopefully you can see that okay. I echo good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are zooming in from. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today. Our pipeline is full of incredible ideas and ventures, and you're the lifeblood of innovation. So it's really important that we remain connected. I'm really excited to introduce you to Victoria and to BioMelbourne Network. It is a place where innovation, particularly MedTech innovation, truly thrives. And I'd like to share about how BioMelbourne Network can also support your growth as well. So, Victoria. Most of you probably know where Melbourne is. BioMelbourne Network represents the whole of Victoria. We are based in Melbourne, though. We are currently and consistently ranked as one of the world's most livable cities as well. So we do have a great balance between work and life. It's also known as Australia's Cultural and Innovation Hub. So why MedTech innovation here? So we host more than 40% of Australia's listed health tech companies. There's a combined market cap of over $181 billion. That is demonstrative of the spread, both from the really early stage companies right through to those larger companies. And that support is really important when you're growing and learning as well. Victoria is also Australia's leading exporter of health technology products, valued at $3 billion annually. And these exports help make MedTech our state's most valuable manufactured export as well. And that's reflected by our government too, and the recognition and support that it gives to companies like yours. Our ecosystem is supported by world-class infrastructure and cutting-edge research, so in areas particularly in neuroscience, oncology, precision medicine, regenerative medicine. We have got renowned university programs. Some of you may have spun out of them, and then are moving towards programs such as the MedTech Innovator. So we also actively foster both universities and industry, those partnerships as well that are really important to help grow as well. We have got a lot of people here. So we have got over 100,000 professionals who work in our MedTech and biotech ecosystem. And again, that's really good for that spillover effect. So that help broaden your knowledge, when you're really, focused in on what is your company doing and how do you progress your technology. It's really important to network and connect with those like-minded individuals. We've also got a strong reputation as a leading destination for clinical trials. So we've got researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, startups, global companies. We've got BioNTech and Moderna. They've chosen to Victoria to research, commercialize their products and their services as well, and to manufacture and export from here as well. And as I mentioned, the Victorian government invests in our ecosystem as well. So we've got Breakthrough Victoria, which is an independently run state government fund, and also a number of investors who call Melbourne home. So, access to capital is always the thing that keeps people up at night. And so, Melbourne's a great place to help address that as well. So BioMelbourne Network, we are almost 25 years old. We are an industry-led membership association that is at the heart of Victoria's health tech ecosystem. So our mission is to serve, inform, connect and inspire the sector and to advocate for it as well. We're your voice. We have a platform for companies and for individuals, ranging right from that really early stage basic research through to your smalls, your mediums, your larges companies. You've got the broader ecosystem, so the researchers, the regulators, the government, the investors. They all come together. We have a really wide range of events that we host as well, and we as well as those thought leadership pieces as well. So we've got a membership of more than 6,000 professionals, and that includes representatives from CSL Limited and Moderna Australia as well. So that's really meaningful in terms of that ability to connect. We have really active events where you can connect and you can ask those questions no matter how basic they are. So, as I said, we support through tailored services and initiatives. It's all based at that knowledge and that resource sharing, that connectivity. So thought leadership events ranging from bioforums, masterclasses, symposiums, they tackle those industry trends and the challenges. Then we've got those networking opportunities where you can connect and you can collaborate. We've also got Willem, which is our Australia's digital platform for our life sciences. It's specifically for our sector. So it's an opportunity no matter where you are in the world to connect in. It's a communities-based platform. So you'll join the national community and then you can join some of those sub-communities as well. There's a directory of more than 6,000 people. So even if you don't know them, you can reach out through there. You can list events. So if you guys have got other events going on and you're wearing your other hats, you're very welcome to add them in there. It's a central space to be able to see what's happening in the community. And there's discussion boards, so you can ask questions as well and see if you're looking for a particular type of expertise and you don't know anyone in the area, please put in a post and we're happy to help share that as well. We also, BioMelbourne Network also has a fortnightly newsletter called In the Loop. Please, you can sign up for that on our website on biomelbournenetwork.org. We are also advocating for the sector as the voice of Victoria's, and we talk at a national level as well with all the other states as well as the national bodies. So you'll get those updates in the Loop newsletter, and it's a really good way to stay connected. And even if you're just hearing what the news is to begin with before you actively start participating. So if you are looking to take your MedTech to the next level, as well as clearly going to the MedTech Innovator, please do connect in with us. Reach out. We've got a team here who would love to hear from you. Come and visit us. Come along to our events, explore Willem, and send through any questions that you may have as well. Thank you so much.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Karen, for that introduction. And you do accept members from around Australia, I believe, right?
Absolutely, and internationally as well.
Excellent. So I'm sure you don't mind us having a Sydney-based company with Sydney Heart Valve joining us this morning. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Karen. Of course, from MedTech Innovator's perspective, we work with Australian companies from across the country, as well as New Zealand, I should say. We had, interestingly, OncoRes out of Perth, Western Australia, was the grand prize winner of MedTech Innovator's main program out of the US before MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific even existed. So I think this goes back to 2018 or 2019. So Australia has always been well represented. We've had the likes of Navi Medical Technology, Lenexa Medical. We've had Sapien Biotome. We've also had from New Zealand Alimetry, which some of you may be familiar with, a wearable device for gut health monitoring based out of Auckland that just managed to raise $18 million a month ago. Making some great progress there. So thanks again, Karen, for joining us. I know you've had a really busy morning, and if you're more than welcome to drop off at this point, and we will certainly leave your contact details and follow-up details with our participants here. Thanks, Karen. So we will get to our fireside chat here with Dr. Hugh Paterson in just a moment. What I wanted to do very briefly before then is to, again, share my screen and give you a very quick overview of MedTech Innovator, who we are, what we do, and what to expect if you're part of the program. So for those of you who are not familiar with MedTech Innovator, we are the world's largest accelerator for traditional medical devices, digital health, and diagnostic startups. The photograph here was taken probably 2 years ago in Singapore, where we host our grand finals. This was the first time we ran it post the pandemic. And you'll see a number of logos here at the bottom of the screen. And the reason they're there is really just to highlight that although we are a non-profit organization, we don't take any equity in the companies that participate. We don't charge a participation fee, but we are entirely industry-led. So we work with very strong, well-established corporate partnerships with the likes of the organizations that you see here. When we go out and proactively scout for participating companies, we do so with these companies in mind and their strategic priorities. We work very closely with them in Asia Pacific. We work very closely with their headquarters and their global business development, M&A, and strategy teams. So as I mentioned, in terms of the number of alumni companies that have gone through MedTech Innovator globally, we are by far the largest healthcare accelerator. We've had 717 companies go through the program, including our cohorts of 2024. 96% of those companies are still active and in business or have been acquired, which is a astonishingly high success rate. They've also gone on to raise close to $9 billion in follow-on equity. We've had 48 outright acquisitions. And typically, our participating companies are a little bit later stage. We welcome companies that are earlier stage, but about 1 in 3 already generates some revenue. So we create impact working, of course, with the startup community, but also with our corporate and our service provider partners. We work with multiple ecosystems across Asia Pacific, as well as in North America and Europe. In the US, we have been established. MedTech Innovator was founded in 2013. So been around now for 12 years. We're headquartered out of Los Angeles, just off the UCLA campus. And the Singapore office, where I'm based and the Singapore team is based, has been here since 2019. Ultimately, obviously, we're here to help patients and to help companies get their innovations to patients. In terms of some stats specifically that relate to our Asia Pacific program, we've had 124 alumni out of APAC over the years. Not all of them based in Asia Pacific. We do occasionally have participating companies dialing in or joining us from the US and Europe as well. Typically, they will do so if they're working on Asian prevalent disease or if they have a strategic interest in the region. They might be running their clinical trials in Australia, or they might have an investor out of Singapore, or doing their contract manufacturing in China, for example. And as you can see here in the lower right-hand part of this slide, development stage-wise, many are preclinical, clinical, smaller number pre-approved, but we do have a substantial number that have paying customers. Funding stages, the majority of our applicants are in the seed to Series A stage, although we do have quite a number of companies that are a bit later stage, Series B, C, or even D. Typically, they tend to be very successful domestically. Often they're based in places like Korea and Japan, or China, where they might have been very, very successful locally and raised a lot of money, but they need help scaling internationally, which is then typically why they join MedTech Innovator. So this is what the program looks like. We're an annual, it's an annual cycle, if you like. We are now open for applications to our 2025 program. We will close by the middle of January 2025. We expect somewhere between 400 to 500 applications. This is to our Asia Pacific program alone. There'll be another 2,000 or so applications going to our US program. And we will then, once those applications come in, we will then work with our corporate partners, as well as our broader ecosystem of VCs and other evaluators to review the applications, and then identify typically about 60 companies that we will invite to pitch. The pitching then typically happens between March to May. Some of those events are in person. Some of those events are virtual, so you don't need to relocate for them. We will be hosting a 2-day in-person pitch event in Singapore at the end of March that we'll talk a little bit more about. Once those 60 companies have pitched, we'll then sit down again with our corporate partners and identify the 20 best companies that get selected to join the Accelerator. And the Accelerator is virtual. So again, there's no need for companies to relocate to be part of the Accelerator. But the Accelerator it's a 4-month Accelerator, but it's bookended by 2 in-person events that companies will need to attend. So it's kicked off by our MedTech Innovator Summit in San Francisco, in just south of San Francisco in Silicon Valley, in June, and the grand finals typically are held in Singapore in September, October. 4 to 5 finalists will then compete for the grand prize. We'll give away $175,000 to one company, one winner. It's entirely non-dilutive, so we don't take any equity for that. And nor do we, as I mentioned earlier, charge a participation fee to be part of the program. These are some of the key dates for next year. On the left-hand side, these are the info sessions that are happening now, of course, as we speak. The pitch events will take place from early March to the end of April. Our Innovator Summit will be 24th to 26th of June, and the Accelerator will take place from June through to October. Grand finals are expected to be held in Singapore at the end of October. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but we often get the question about how do we evaluate applicants? We have a fairly rigorous and quite structured approach to do this. Our reviewers all do their reviews online. So although we don't take any equity or charge a participation fee, there is a bit of work involved in submitting your application. It's all done online, and I will share the QR codes to get to the application page at the end of this session. But typically, in terms of evaluation, we look at your innovation and your company from the lens of value, execution, and momentum. And these are typically some of the metrics that we will look at and that our reviewers will look at in evaluating your application. So there are a number of activities that take place during the course of the Accelerator. 2 of the key components of the Accelerator are the educational webinar series, and we'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. And the other key element is the one-on-one mentorship. So every participating company in our cohort will receive at least one corporate mentor, sometimes two and sometimes three. And we'll speak to Dr. Hugh Paterson here in a moment. I believe Sydney Heart Valve had the benefit of having no less than three mentors in our 2024 program. So as I mentioned, the entire accelerator kicks off by invitation only Innovator Summit that happens in San Francisco, just south of San Francisco in Mountain View every year. And this is where we bring together not only our cohort from Asia Pacific, but our two cohorts from the US as well. So our BioTools Innovator cohort will be there, as well as our US European cohort. So typically about 1,100 participants over 4 days. We run workshops. We bring our alumni in to be, they're part of our alumni faculty to run workshops for current cohorts. We have our corporate partners. We have an investor day where every participating company will have the opportunity to pitch in front of US investors. So that kicks off the accelerator, and it gives you a tremendous opportunity to network and plug into not just our APAC ecosystem, but our entire North American ecosystem as well. These are some examples of webinar topics that we cover through our educational webinar series. We have, and you'll see some of the mentor logos here as well in the upper left-hand corner. So the topics that we cover are usually determined by a survey that we conduct with our cohort companies. So at the beginning of the accelerator, we'll survey the 20 companies that are in that year's cohort because their pain points and their particular areas of interest may differ from one year to the next. But typically you will expect topics like fundraising and looking at term sheets, corporate partnerships and mergers and acquisitions, how to attract talent and build advisory boards, regulatory strategy, where typically we have maybe an Asia Pacific expert, regulatory expert, as well as someone who's an expert on the US FDA and US regulatory pathways. We talk about commercialization and building and managing distribution channels. So these are just some examples of the types of topics that we cover. And our cohort company will always have the opportunity to interact directly in a closed door setting with our speakers. Just wanted to share a few photographs from our different events throughout the year. These are from 2024. Some of these are taken in Singapore. Some of them are taken in San Francisco or in Mountain View. Some are from our pitch events, some are from our grand finals, some are from our showcase panels and our workshops. Although the accelerator is virtual, there are multiple opportunities to interact with our broader ecosystem. This is just a photo I wanted to share of our winner 2024. This was a company out of Taiwan, a Prevent, working on an implantable device to address voice disorders. So they walked away with a check of $175,000. Up on stage, you'll see Ashley Whittorf, Head of Business Development from Johnson & Johnson, Paul Grand, our CEO, and Vitran, who is the Asia Pacific President for Siemens Healthineers, as well as Rafael Ong, who heads Business Development for Teleflex. So these are some of our corporate partners that you would have had the opportunity to meet in Singapore. And these are all of our winners and our entire cohort as they appeared on stage in Singapore back in September, just a couple of months ago. So as I mentioned, we are now open for applications for our 2025 program. Our deadline is the 15th of January. We are welcoming applicants to all of our 3 programs, and I often get the question, when should we consider applying for the APAC program, and when does it make sense to apply to the US main MedTech Innovator program? And the short answer is you are welcome to apply to both. You can only be part of one or the other. So when it comes to selection for an accelerator program, you cannot be in both. You can only be in one. We typically encourage all companies that are headquartered here in the Asia Pacific region to apply to the Asia Pacific program. We will be on your time zone. We will conduct webinars on your time zone. You don't need to get up 3 o'clock in the morning or at some very odd hour to participate in events and activities, because they're all on US time zone. Plus, we have fewer applicants, so there's less competition for you. And you will have the opportunity to interact with our US program as well, as you come out to San Francisco. If you're working on the life science space and in biotools, then of course the biotools program may be more relevant for you than the MedTech Innovator program. This is the QR code to apply. I'll share this at the end of the session as well. And you'll find this on our website. So if you scan that, you'll get to our application page, and you will find much more information about how to apply. As you scan, you'll get to the sign-in page where you will, if you have not previously applied to the program, you are then welcome to sign up and create your account. And then you create a profile for your company, and you can then begin your application online. If you have previously applied, you can use your same login, and your application will be populated with data that you submitted during one of the previous years. We have a large number of our applicants have applied previously, so you are most welcome to apply again. What typically happens is that either we, at the time when you applied, we didn't have a corporate partner who had a particular interest in your innovation or in your field, or you may have now hit a few additional milestones, and that would potentially make your application far more attractive to our reviewers. So we do encourage companies to reapply. With that, I will stop my presentation. Again, as I mentioned, you are most welcome to queue up your questions either in the chat or using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I will move on to our chat with Dr. Hugh Paterson, and we're delighted to have Hugh join us. Thanks again for being part of this. And I thought maybe to begin with, actually, before we begin, I wanted to first of all congratulate you on being selected I saw that Sydney Heart Valve was selected among Australia's top 100 innovators in 2024. So congratulations on that. Hugh, tell us a little bit about that award. What was that, and what was that particular recognition? You're on mute. You just have to unmute yourself, Hugh. Sorry. There we go.
The top 100 was published in the Australian newspaper. I'm not quite sure who were the selectors in that program, but yeah, that's our national newspaper, so it was very exciting for us.
And it covered a multiple verticals. So it wasn't just for healthcare, but they were top innovators in other sectors as well, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent, excellent. So maybe as a general introduction, you are the co-founder, former cardiothoracic surgeon based out of New South Wales and Sydney. Maybe tell us a little bit about Sydney Heart Valve, about your company, and how did you find out about MedTech Innovator, and what made you decide to apply?
So Sydney Heart Valve is a team of cardiac surgeons, researchers, and biomedical engineers. And we were addressing a shortcoming in delivery of healthcare, in that current heart valves provided inadequate outcomes for a small group of patients with severe heart disease. So based on the research that was coming out of Sydney University, we were able to design a new style of heart valve where those patients with severe heart disease could derive reasonable benefit, theoretically. We're a very early startup, so it was all research-based and a theoretical design. We did some large animal work, but not survival studies. So we came into MedTech Innovator as a very early startup company. We were invited through one of the biomedical engineers in our team, who also runs another company. And the feeling was that Sydney Heart Valve would be more suitable to MedTech Innovator than the company that was directly invited.
Excellent. And of course, your engineering colleague and I believe Chief Executive Ashish is not able to join this call. I understand he's in Europe on a time zone that doesn't allow him to join us. But both of you were then selected and invited to come up to Singapore for our in-person pitch event in April earlier this year. Maybe tell us a little bit about that experience, because our pitch events are a little bit different from the traditional pitch events where we have one company after the other stand up and present in front of a very large audience. Maybe share your experience, Hugh, on that.
Yeah, there were a certain number of companies, I think 60 at the pitch
30,
event.
30, I think there was at that event.
Sorry,
Yeah.
30. So it was quite small. There was a lot of support within the forum from industry and other support services, and that was extremely welcoming. It made us very, very comfortable presenting the Sydney Heart Valve perspective at the time, and the positive feedback that we got was extremely encouraging for us.
That's good to hear. We do try to make the point of having our judges provide feedback to all companies pitching, whether or not they get selected to join the Accelerator. So hopefully that was something that I believe you received as well. So we had 30 companies pitch. I believe we had well over 40 judges for that event. And typically, just for those of you who may not be familiar with our format, it is a format where the startups make multiple presentations in smaller breakout groups. So it's an opportunity for the startup to interact directly with the judges. And the judges typically are more engaged because they will have read your pitch deck ahead of time and are able to ask more relevant questions. So then, of course, Hugh, we ultimately, of course, Sydney Heart Valve was selected to join us. We had the pleasure of having Ashish join us in San Francisco at the MedTech Innovator Summit. And I believe although we didn't have the pleasure of you joining us for that event, I believe his feedback was positive and he had a good experience in the US.
Yes, yeah, he was like me, who was absolutely bowled over by the Singapore experience and went to San Francisco and had that experience reinforced quite substantially there too. So very, very worthwhile from our perspective.
Excellent. We then kicked off the Accelerator. We conducted our webinars, and I think you had the opportunity, excuse me, to join several of those educational webinars online. Maybe just share some of your thoughts and feedback on those and how, to what extent they were relevant to Sydney Heart Valve.
Yeah, they were all relevant. There's no doubt about that. Some not immediately relevant in developing a company structure with CEOs, because we're still quite early. We don't have any financial turnover except outgoings, and there was benefit from all of them, and quite significant benefit from the ones that were immediately relevant to us, like negotiating with venture capitalists, because that can be a bit daunting. And there are very good techniques to be learned from the alumni of the past.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. And then, as I think I mentioned earlier, Sydney Heart Valve had the benefit of working with no less than 3 mentors. And I believe you worked with Johnson & Johnson, as well as with W.L. Gore, as well as with the Mullings Group. And I understand you were part of many of those conversations. Typically, for companies that are dialing in on this info session, we don't make the mentoring overly time consuming for either the startup or the mentor. So typically we recommend about a 1 hour call every 2 weeks, every 2 to 3 weeks, which is usually works out quite well. Obviously you had to juggle at Sydney Heart Valve, you had to juggle scheduling 3 different calls every 2 to 3 weeks. So tell us a little bit about, Hugh, about your experience with a mentorship, the kinds of conversations that you had, and the usefulness of that.
The mentors were all different, so the conversations were different and extremely helpful. So we were having 1 or 2 sessions per week, which was a little bit busy, but we enjoyed it very much. So we got financial advice from Gore. We were put in touch with other important contacts around the world through Johnson & Johnson, and we received really amazing common sense advice from Mullings Group, who seemed to have a very good feeling for our company.
Very good. And you have you've remained in touch with some of these mentors, I understand.
Yes, our contacts with Gore will resume later on because they're a company that we can deal with in the future.
Yeah.
And with Mullings Group, the information or the advice from them is really good. Johnson & Johnson, I think, we've pursued the contacts that we've been provided through them, and they've been very beneficial, and it's been good for us.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I guess one of the benefits, whether you win the grand prize at the end or not, is being part of the accelerator is you are now certainly on the radar of many of these large multinationals, and they will not forget about you. They will typically they may not necessarily sign a big check to invest in your company at the end of the accelerator, and that's not the purpose of the program. But they will typically want to stay in touch and may touch base in 6 months, 9 months down the road when you hit certain milestones, and certainly would be very keen to check in. So although the mentorship sort of comes to an end at the end of the 4 months, we very often see mentors and mentee companies remaining in touch well beyond that time period. So in a nutshell, Hugh, what did you feel was maybe the most valuable aspect of the MedTech Innovator program?
Well, there are a lot of things. I mean, we're still applying a lot of the things that we learned through the Accelerator program. We've built a financial business model. We've developed clinical studies or plans and contacts around the world to implement those. Our ability to negotiate to get funding is very much enhanced by a lot of things that we learned through the Accelerator program. So I think our mindset is much better. We're better informed. We don't get depressed by knockbacks now quite so much. There's always hiccups along the way, as you know, but it's good. We're quite happy.
Excellent. And any advice you would give to any company that might be sort of sitting on the fence deciding on whether or not to apply to the program?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're thinking about it, just do it, because it really for us, it was a game changer. It's given us a lot of confidence to go forward and know that we're better positioned to succeed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those kind words, Hugh. Really appreciate it. And thanks again for joining us this morning or your afternoon. I think with that, I'm conscious of time. We did want to get to some Q&A as well. So I will start to address some of the questions here. Let me just, while we do that, I will switch to the QR code. So we'll have that up while we go into Q&A. Now, we had one question here about when would I hear back if my application was successful? Great question. So coming back to the timing of the reviews, deadline is middle of January. Our reviewers will go through all the applications during the month of January and February. Because the pitch events, the online pitch events are thematic. So the first one may cover cardiology, cardiovascular devices, and diagnostic imaging, for example, and chronic disease management. The second online pitch event may cover surgical robotics and orthopedics. So if that's the case, we will review the companies that are relevant for the first pitch event first. So not all companies will get a notification at the same time. You will get them gradually over the course of February through to April. So that's when we will get back to you. If we have already held one online pitch event, don't feel discouraged. There are still more pitch events coming up later in the year. If it's early March and there's a pitch event you have not been invited to, we're still running pitch events right up until the end of April. And you may get invited to those. So those invitations will come out in typically 2 to 3 weeks before the event, before the pitch event. For the in-person pitch event that takes place in Singapore, we hope to revert to those companies at least 4 weeks ahead of time so that you are able to plan travels. Another question here. Again, I think this one is from Jane. Thanks for your questions, Jane. What is the commitment for the program? How much time do my team and I have to put in generally? So difficult to give a general number, and maybe I'll turn to Hugh on this since we have you here. How much of your time and Ashish's time did this take you? Was it couple of hours a week? Was it something that took time every day, or were you still able to find a reasonable balance between doing your day job at Sydney Heart Valve and participating in the program?
Certainly, the application was very quick. The travel to Singapore was obviously time allocated and time well spent. And the Accelerator program, I think because we had 3 mentors, we were reasonably busy. But, you know, it was a great time investment. We could have soaked up a lot more if we given the opportunity. But I think if there was only 1 or 2 mentors, it would be you know, fairly comfortable with just 1 webinar per week is easily accommodated.
Yeah, thanks for that, Hugh. So yeah, so the webinar is typically 1 hour a week, and the mentorship. It's unusual that we have companies with 3 mentors, I should say. Typically, most companies would be assigned 1 or maximum 2 mentors. And those mentors would typically schedule a call with you at the most once every 2 weeks. We recommend typically once every 3 weeks. So we have another question here from Liz. Thank you so much for the session, very informative. The question is, if the Asia Pacific Innovator program was designed to be a springboard to the US program, or is the content for both programs very similar, or is it better to do just one? That's a great question. Although there are similarities between the programs, they are different. The Asia Pacific program, if you're based here in the region, and if it's maybe the first time you're participating in a major global accelerator, I'd recommend you be part of the Asia Pacific Accelerator. We provide perspectives where we, if you like, we contrast some of the strategies, be they in reimbursement or regulatory or distribution or fundraising, between North America and Asia Pacific. So we would typically do webinars and get experts in from that represent and have a good understanding of how the TGA works, or how the NMPA works in China, or how PMDA works in Japan, and we'll put them on the same panel as a US FDA expert. And we'll talk about what's the best way of shortening timelines in Asia Pacific. Should you go for a US FDA approval first? Can you then leverage that in Asia, or vice versa? Should you go for a 510K or a de novo? So the discussions that we have that relate to the US, we're not ignoring the US, because it is the world's #1 medical device market. Everyone wants to get to the US at some point, typically. But we recognize that the level of knowledge, if you are participating in the MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific program, we assume that you are relatively new to the US. If you apply to our US MedTech Innovator program, you'll be there together with a whole bunch of companies that are locally based in the US. They know their CPT codes. They understand the regulatory pathways. They understand how to organize a pre-submission meeting with the US FDA. They understand how Medicare and Medicaid work. So there's a level of knowledge that they already have. So for that perspective, it might be, certainly when it comes to the US market itself, a more advanced program. If you do not have a presence in the US at this time, we'd recommend you to apply to the APAC program first. You'll still get a good feel of what's happening and what's important in the US, but that would probably be the way that I would look at it. And certainly the time zone is a lot easier to navigate. Most of our mentors are based on a Singapore, Australia, Shanghai, Japan time zone, and you would not have to get on calls at ghastly hours. So we have another question here, which is, how are the mentors being assigned, and are they the same across the cohort? No. So the short answer to that is they're not the same. And we take great pride in tailoring our and matching the right mentor with the right company. So we try to go out of our way to find mentors to our cohort companies that are experts in your domain, or have particularly relevant expertise that is relevant to you as a participating company. One of the things that I did not mention is at the beginning of the program, at the beginning of the accelerator, once we have the 20 companies identified, we do in-depth one-on-one calls with the founder and the CEO of each company, and that's done by us from the MedTech Innovator side, to discuss your short-term goals, business goals, as well as expectations out of MedTech Innovator, and we will then share them with your mentor. So your mentor goes into the mentorship discussion prepared, and you can hit the road running on your first call with your mentor. Sometimes we do not find a mentor that is a good fit out of our corporate partners in Asia Pacific. We will then turn to our partners in the US or in Europe. So it does happen that sometimes a company that's in our Asia Pacific cohort gets a mentor that may be based in Europe or may be based in North America. We had a company, for example, in this year's cohort that works on a mental health or a mobile app that monitors cognitive decline. And none of our corporate partners had expertise in that area that were based in Asia Pacific. We managed to identify a US headquartered VC that had done portfolio investments specifically in that same area and had some extremely relevant input to provide to the CEO and the leadership team of that company, as an example. So hopefully that addresses your question. Do we have any other questions from anyone else at this point? Just hitting the Q&A here. One question that we get very often is, should you sign a non-disclosure agreement before you get into your mentorship discussions? Before we get into mentoring, typically we provide detailed onboarding for the mentors. We provide onboarding for the mentees. Our recommendation is not to sign a non-disclosure agreement with your mentor unless you absolutely have to. Typically, we will certainly not sign an NDA for you to submit your application. Your application should not contain anything that is confidential. We typically have, it's the same requirement as when you speak to a VC. A VC typically will never sign an NDA either. If you were to have a mentor that is very technical, we do have some mentors that are working on product design and product development programs and activities. If that's the case and you feel more comfortable signing an NDA, then by all means request one. Normally we would suggest that you sign the NDA of your mentor as opposed to the other way around, because it might get stuck for 1 month in their corporate legal department, which is not the place you want to be. So hopefully that addresses that question. Happy to take any other questions at this point from anyone else. Pause here and see if we have any other questions. One question that, sorry, I'll just reading a question here. Would it be possible to download the application form? I'm aware that we can save it along the way. I think the short answer to that is, unfortunately, it is entirely online, so it's not downloadable. It's a good question though, and maybe I'll flag this to our team. We'll see if that might be possible. It is a fairly extensive form. Of course, it will be automatically saved along the way, and if you need input from other departments, let us see if we can get a PDF version of that. It might be possible. We'll get back to you on that particular question. A question we get from time to time as well is whether I can apply as a project. I may be part of a university. We haven't yet spun off this innovation into a standalone company. Can we still apply? The answer to that is unfortunately no. You do need to have a company incorporated. If you are still a university research project, you are probably too early for MedTech Innovator. So we expect as a minimum for a few people, a founder, a couple of co-founders to at minimum be part-time, maybe to have a little bit of initial capital, but and again, as a minimum, have a company incorporated. But seed stage, early pre-series A, you're still welcome to apply, although typically our applicants are in the pre-A series A stage. All right, let me see if there's anything else. I don't think we have any more questions at this point. There will be more and more FAQs that we will put up on our website to populate as we go. So do visit our website for more information. There should be fairly detailed instructions as well on how to complete your application. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us on the email on your screen. But I think with that, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'll stop my screen share here. Again, thanks to Karen from BioMelbourne Network, and a big thank you, Hugh, for joining us. It's been wonderful having you part of the Accelerator, and thanks again for joining us on the info session this morning. And I should add that all of our alumni companies will automatically get an invitation to join our Innovator Summit in San Francisco. So do look forward to that invitation, and we hope to see how you or Ashish rejoin us for that in June 2025 with our new cohort for 2025. So thank you so much, Hugh. Thank you thanks all of you for having joined us today. Greatly appreciated. This info session will be available as a recording on YouTube. So do look out for that. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you.